action.
Should we have a look at the Coldplay?
Yeah.
Because I think there's some speaking of the accumulation of meaning and how an idea develops and runs alongside the track, I think this is another good example of that. And it's kind of like both these music videos are a real kind of, I think, a real education to people writing ideas for music videos.
Yeah.
So I've written them down actually. You have ambient light, turn light on through glass window, shaft of light, which is the first stage of the magic. Second stage of the magic is snow, then the trees, and then the floating. So and how you introduce these changes, the transitions, and then talking about the glacier, the Jonathan Glacier sort of circular idea, you return back to the beginning again.
Yeah.
So anyway, John, could you run us through?
I mean, so this idea, I had this, I wrote this concept of a figure skater dancing with a partner that you can't see. And it was actually a really interesting battle with not battle's the wrong word, but like a very interesting dialogue with the record label and the band that wanted the magic trick up front. They were like, we want to see her flying through the air and we want to see these tricks at the beginning. And I was like, but then you've got nowhere to go. Like, we've just got nowhere to develop this to. And if you go too soon, you kill it before you even know what you have. Like, you've not even given it time to breathe, or you've not given the idea time to like percolate in people's brains and for people to connect to what you're trying to tell them or what you're trying to show them. And so I had to really kind of fight for the way that the idea unfolds over 3.5 minutes and be quite strong about the way I see it being done. And that was purely to preserve, because I think somebody actually floating around, I think she does one trick where she floats and the rest of the time she doesn't. And I think if she had earlier, it'd start to look like The Exorcist or something. It would lose all emotional impact because the symbol is overused, So for me, it was like, how can I keep the purity of that symbol of her dancing with a partner that we can't see, and in some ways make it so that people don't even notice she's dancing with a partner until it's too late,
Right.
So it's not even right at the beginning that they're like, oh, there's a partner. A lot of the choreography was how to obscure that there was a partner there,
Interesting.
And
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, and then building up, still trying to keep enough visual interest through the 3.5 minutes, so that bought me the time to not have the flying around or floating around. And that was why, I mean, it's actually funny to sort of think about your work sometimes, because this, like, I spend a lot of my time sort of thinking about my internal world, my interior world, and the exterior world in which I live in, and trying to figure out what is an internal thing coming outside and what is an outside thing coming inside, and what that conversation that happens within me, what work that creates, which is a very wanky thing to say about yourself, but I'm a wanky person. And this, the symbols in this film, like the silver birch trees, the ice, the snow, they work on, and the light, they work on 2 levels. They're just visually cool, like they look cool, they're like interesting things to see, but then they also just prep a viewer for, and what you're watching is the internal world of the dancer made physical,
Yeah.
And then returning to the end where everything's gone again just really like reveals that the fact that what you have been watching hasn't been, again, it's had that duality of like, is it real, is it not real, is it an emotional landscape that we've been watching? Has she just been skating around and this was all like what she was feeling rather than what was actually happening? And that's
Well, one thing I have to say, particularly when we get onto your commercials work, is you're very, very good at visualizing an internal emotional landscape, which I wonder is maybe down to your rigorous theatre kind of training early on, because it's something that I think is a trope that
could just be because I'm a sensitive old soul, innit?
Well, yeah,
it could be.
Yeah,
could be that.
Yeah, but it's something that it shows up in some of your work later on that we'll get onto, which we should discuss. So can you talk me through? So firstly, this location.
I've got a banging story about this location.
Okay,
no, go on. What were you going to ask?
I was going to ask about, because the ambient light and the window. That's either a very, very lucky find, or was that idea written around having found a location?
The story of this film is like hilarious. So all I'd written at first was an ice skater dances with a partner she can't see, and then the treatment was that, you know, it was going to snow inside and all this kind of stuff. And Chris Martin was like, yeah, this is cool, man. Yeah, I like it. Can there be like giant church windows? I was like, sorry, what? He's like, yeah, I really want giant church windows. Like, and he showed me this photograph of Grand Central Station with the light coming through. It's a very famous photograph. He was like, can we do that? And I was like, I don't think so, actually. I don't know any ice rink in the world that has the windows of Grand Central Station. He's like, it's a shame. Do you reckon we can look for them? I was like, all right, yeah. So we sent a scout out to just research every single ice rink in Europe. And then the band came back and they said, so we are going to do this video, but we need to shoot it half an hour away from where the band are playing, because they're on a tour. So Chris will come, he'll do his bit, because he was meant to be in it. He ended up, we did actually shoot him for the video, but the cut worked better without him. And
what part was he going to play?
He was just playing the piano on the ice. And he was the one. It was like the label wanted him in, and I was like, okay, like, you know, it's Chris Martin. Like, he probably should be in it. So I managed to like adapt the idea so he was in it. And then when we all looked at the cut, everyone was like, it's better if he wasn't in it. Even Chris was like, it's better when I'm not in it. It's like, cool. So we had to find an ice rink that was like half an hour away from where they were playing. And we scoured around, found this place in Hanover. And all the videos online had this unbelievable roof and what looked like these windows coming through. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And called them up. They were like, yeah, we're free. We'd love to do it. Yeah, this is it. And because it's a music video, and because, you know, the way we have to work in that world, we couldn't go and do a tech recce because it was in Germany until like the day before the build day, when we'd start like building the trees and all this stuff, because we shot the film backwards.
In reverse, yeah.
And I'll never forget, I was driving from Hanover Airport and I got a phone call from my producer, and he went, mate, there's no fucking ice. I was like, what do you mean there's no ice? It's like, there's no ice in this ice rink. It's like, wait, but it's an ice rink, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it's an ice rink, but there are no walls. And it was the middle of the summer. And it's basically an ice rink, outdoor ice rink with a cantilevered roof that looked like, on every single photo, it looked like it had walls and glass. But when you turned up, it was like an outdoor ice rink with a cantilevered concrete roof open to the elements. And obviously when you're speaking to them, this was a learning curve. Obviously when we were speaking to them, I never thought to ask them, do you have walls and do you have ice?
Yeah.
Like, it's so mad. But
the language barrier probably didn't as well.
And so we were then like, we had to re-ice an ice rink and keep it cool for the 2 days that we shot, and build walls and a roof. So all that is all blackout. These are all like stills, BTS stills, but you can actually see the bottom right hand corner where it goes out into the outside. So that band where the lights are,
and below
that's all just drapes. It's like the biggest blackout job in Europe. It was huge. And then because we were sort of doing this job of blacking the whole place out. I was like, actually, I think I can build you some church light windows, actually, because we don't have a wall. So that would help, actually.
Do you have that?
So above the white section, that's where the Astera tubes are, that was all just open to the elements.
Right.
And we just blacked it off and then built those windows.
Glass windows. And do you remember what light you were using through there?
I think they were 20Ks just on cherry pickers.
Right.
Yeah. It was Pat Mellor that was the DOP on it.
Right.
And he basically like circumvented so you can see it's open there.
You can see the blackout going up over there.
So and that's a scaffolding to put the blackout up. You know, it was quite mad, actually.
Yeah. So this is quite a big budget music video.
I think it ended up being a big budget music video. At the beginning, it wasn't meant to be a big budget music video. And, you know, I'd written an idea with 2 people in it in one location. That's quite a cheap idea. But it just so happened that
20-minute from where they're playing, and then wow, what a great story. I mean, I wasn't expecting that, I have to be honest. And the floating, can you talk us through how you did that?
Yeah, so I couldn't afford wires. I couldn't afford wire rig, couldn't afford CGI, like post. And so the easiest...
All the money went on the blackout.
All the money went on the blackout, yeah. So the way that I devised, because again, you know, so much of the job, I think, is finding the magic trick and then not showing people how you did it. And sometimes I found that to my detriment. I mean, there's a music video we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that's the next one up.
That in some ways people don't realise I'm creating a magic trick in front of them, because I kind of bury it, like, you know, and I enjoy burying it. I try not to. I'm obviously like egotistical because I'm a director. You don't become a director without having a healthy dose of ego, but I try not to be so egotistical as like, look at me. I try and make great piece of work. And almost something, actually, I talked to Sam Brown, who's a director at Rover. We talk about the mark of the maker. You don't want to see the maker's mark. Like, the work should stand on its own. You should never know who made it. It should just be a brilliant piece of work
in itself. Yeah.
And that's something that I don't think is very fashionable at the minute. You know, I think everyone has a kind of style or a thing that they do, and I try to hide my style completely. Yeah, for better or worse. But so the way that I devised doing this was that I knew that I couldn't have wires. I knew that I couldn't have CGI because I'd spent all the money on blackout. I knew that I needed her to float like she had a partner. So what I devised was to shoot it on 8 cameras, circumventing the whole arena. That she's dancing with a character in a green suit, and at any moment I can cut to another camera, because if she crosses over him, that's fine, but if he crosses over her, that's a problem. So because they're constantly rotating, I always needed an angle where he was behind her. So sense. I had a guy in a green morph suit that was dancing with her, and then I always had an angle that I could cut to where and there were a couple.
That's smart.
There were a couple of shots where they had to do CGI work on it, because like she's literally spinning, and you can't. But on the whole, you know, so much I think of a job of a director is to manage your resources, and then let's say, you know, you've got a post team that are working on something. If you can get them to work to their fullest ability on 2 shots rather than on 50 shots. Your work will be so much better. So this was an exercise in, okay, how can I reduce the post workload, get the effect that I need? Yes, we have to, I suppose, up front pay for extra bodies and some lenses, but actually...
What camera did you shoot it on?
I think it was all on red, actually, red epic.
And was it always going to be black and white?
I wanted it to be black and white.
And they had to shoot it colour, and then
we shot it
argue it later.
Yeah, we shot it colour. I really wanted it to be black and white, because I felt like there was such a clean, elegant simplicity to it, and it wasn't about it being, you know, emotional, so therefore it needs to be in black and white. It was just, I felt that the tones and the contrasts were just very just white. It played in white and dark.
Yeah, I mean, from the sun shafts to the snow to the tree silhouettes to her silhouette, it plays really well. And you don't need any more information than that, really, do you? So
and it came out, it came out super well. Like, I'm really proud of this job.
Do you remember what date this was?
I think it was 20. I want to say it was like March 2014 or something like that.
Right. And this is when your career starts to really take off.
Yeah, I mean,
pieces
this is probably like, I have a little run of work. So I do this. I do a trilogy of videos for the Maccabees, who are like a British band that are some of my favorite band actually. And then I do Kelvin Jones, which we're going to go to next. I do a bunch of work that kind of gets noticed, you know. Not that, and Gabriel Applin's sort of in some ways the start of that. And then I have this like run of about 2 years where I make a bunch of music.
And what production company are you at this time?
That's all still with Chief,
yeah,
you know. And at this point, it's like I start having meetings with other production companies that are like, you know, and I start to get noticed a little bit, and I start to get kind of
agencies requesting.
Yeah. And it starts to really, like, the Rolling Rock starts to gather moss, as they say. Good.
So let's look at the Kelvin Jones, because I think this is amazing. It's story,
isn't it?
It's bonkers. Yeah, I mean, I must say, when I was watching it, I was trying to break it down. I was like, how did he do the reflections? How did he get them so good? And anyway, do you want to tell a story?
Yeah. So I had this idea of, so the song is called "Call You Home."
But just before you start, this sequence here, how do you think he shot this? No? Okay. What would you guess though? Green screen? Or, yeah, you guess green screen, wouldn't you? Yeah.
We've got one answer of green screen.
Yeah.
The most logical.
Yeah, but then you start to look at all the little kicks of light.
You can see the reflections and see the front screen, the reflection of the front screen. Anyway,
Incorrect answer. Yeah, it's actually the way that I made this video is the only way that a madman would make a video. I mean, there's actually a bit coming up in a minute. It's probably another minute or so that kind of gives away how I did it, where a little bit of the TV
breaks off.
Yeah.
That's the bit that I kept rewinding. I was like, what the fuck's that? Yeah.
So here it is.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah.
So
what does that say?
Did it for real.
You put a TV into space.
Yeah, it's the highest recorded weather balloon, or it was when we did it. We got 99.99998% above the atmosphere.
Wow.
So basically the track was called "Call You Home," and I was like thinking about, you know, the concept of home, and then I was sort of, you know, again in that idea of like reducing the idea down to its like simplest elements, and making a big visual thing out of something so simple. I thought, well, the best home is the planet. So how can I make a film where the planet is the background? And then I thought I could just tie a TV to a weather balloon and send it off into space and film it from GoPros. And everyone was like, that is completely mad. Like, you can't do that. It's impossible. And then I found a bunch of meteorologists that work at the University of Manchester. They've now got a company, right? So before they were
I thought Manchester might have something to do with this story.
So up until this job, there's a funny story about this shot as well, which I'll tell you in a minute. But found these meteorologists at the University of Manchester, and I was like, look, I've got this idea. I want to send a TV into space that has a pre-recorded music video playing on it in reverse, because obviously
you have to start.
Things go up and they explode, and then it crash lands. And I knew that I wanted this graceful descent, so I had to shoot a music video, load it on. So we stripped the TV out. We got rid of, it's an old cathode ray TV. We stripped the TV out, got rid of all the bits and bobs. We put an iPad in the TV that played a
loop.
loop.
Yeah.
in reverse.
Mm.
We did replace a couple of the shots in post afterwards because, you know, so it's like music video, you need to edit some bits that didn't quite work. But then we sent that off into space. So there's no back of that TV, basically.
How long does it take for the balloon to go from ground level to the highest?
Well, we so we set it off from South Wales, and we literally, I thought I need it to land somewhere where there's nothing around it. So I can't set it off from like central London. Also, if I did, I'd be in every airspace in the world.
Yeah, right.
Like,
yeah.
No one would let me do it.
Yeah, of course.
So we spoke to these meteorologists, and they said, well, actually, we need to do an experiment soon. We need to send up a weather balloon. And like, maybe there's a way that we could help each other. So you pay for the weather balloon. We can put some instruments on it. We'll deal with all the airspace, and we'll deal with all the
great deal.
bits and bobs. And because of the payload on the balloon, which was the TV, and we just hung, it's all shot on GoPro. So the whole thing's just GoPro. That we had to get the weather balloon specially custom made. So it was this weather balloon that was a big weather balloon, basically. And then went out to South Wales. We set 2 identical TVs off an hour apart, and each TV had, I think, 2 camera angles on it. So I had 4 camera angles in total. So I had a front, a top, a 3/4, and I can't remember what else I had, something else.
And it's just hung with wires.
Just hung with wires, and then basically they're hung with wires onto a circular cradle of like of a wire that then from that is basically coat hangers holding GoPros pointing back at the TV. And then it gets sent off from South Wales, from this valley, Triffin Valley, and the first TV ended up in Derby. It went up, crashed.
But when it crashes, how do you know it's not going to hit someone on the head?
You don't. Well, it has a parachute on it.
Right.
It's got a parachute on it.
Yeah,
so
but someone's going to see a TV coming down with a parachute.
Actually, it landed. So then we had a runner in a car that had a GPS, and they were just driving, following. So I feel like maybe I can tell this story.
Yeah, cool.
But maybe I can't tell the story. Maybe I can tell the story. We obviously turned up in this valley with a whole record label and got 2 TVs, and I set the first one off, and off it goes. And then we set the second one off an hour later, or half an hour later, and off it goes. The commissioner turns to me and goes, "Cool, man, how do we monitor it?" And I'm like, "Oh no, we don't." And he's like, "Right, how do we know that it's gonna look good?" I was like, "We don't." He's like, "But why are we doing this? Like, how are we doing this? Like, is this it?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is it." And he's like, "What do we do now?" I said, "Well, now we're all in a youth hostel down the road. We're just going to go to the pub, get pissed, wait for the footage to come back tomorrow, and see if it's good." And he's like, "What?" So yeah, we just went to the pub down the road, had a couple of beers, stayed in this youth hostel, and we had a runner in a car that was driving around with like what now would be an Apple tag, but it was a GPS tag. And the first TV landed somewhere near Derby in the Peak District, and the second TV caught this wind, which the meteorologists were trying to find. It's like this special wind that I don't know enough about it, but there's like certain winds that revolve around the world that are very rare, and we managed to catch this one wind, this gust, that carried the balloon, and at one point it was going to land in Finland. And they were like, "Dude, like this could end up in fucking Finland or Siberia or something." And it ended up landing just outside Hull, because it could have also landed in the sea, and then we'd be fucked. Like, no video. But yeah,
that's going back to your taking risk kind of concept from the beginning. Yeah.
I'm being comfortable with mitigating risks.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's not like a bunch of people chancing it. It's like we've got these meteorologists.
Calculated, but it's still risk.
And you're putting the production in the perfect aperture for success. which is that you have everything that you need in order to make a success, and you're not scared of taking the risk in terms of getting it great. I mean, the mad thing is people look at it and think I did it in green screen when it's the simplest thing, which is that I just sent a TV into space.
I mean, there's I mean, you said earlier about the ego not having the the sort of hallmark of your style or anything, and being kind of anonymous or whatever. But there is something to be said for like the mechanics of the trick sometimes as beautiful as the actual illusion, right?
Yeah.
And like Penn and Teller, they do this. They're famous magicians for showing behind the scenes of how they do the trick. And there's certain tricks the actual mechanics of it's so beautiful that they love to celebrate the fact that you can actually master,
Yeah.
And I think this is an example of that. It's a real shame not to have any behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, so this was before behind the scenes were really like being done on music videos. I've got I have some stills that I took. I don't think I sent them to you, but I've got some stills of
if you send them to us later, we'll include them in the cart.
I've got some like stills that I took of like us all hanging out, waiting for the TV to come on. And
at the E-Pods.
Yeah, and it was, but it and if I was to make this work now, I would probably have a camera
on the ground
pointing up, or I would have a camera underneath it looking up at the balloon. And I would definitely reveal the trick at some point. I think at this point I was in a part of my career where I was, I was really trying to. I basically
trying to be purist about it.
Trying to be purist, and also like I really wanted. I think I didn't want to show my work in. Yeah. Because.
But
the weird thing is that is the River Mersey, and that's my Warrington is just on that river there, so that you can actually see my house there, my parents' house.
That's super cool.
And
that's the bit falling off.
Yeah, I didn't want to show my work, and I think that is some of that. When I think back, is because of insecurities of feeling like I want people to be like, how did he do it? Yeah, which is maybe egotistical.
But I love the bit falling off the TV, because that's what made me question it. When I saw it before you sent me the email saying that telling me the story, I was convinced. I mean, you just assumed it's really done in post. And when that bit fell off the TV, I was like, I've got to ask about that. What the fuck that is? And then when you sent me the email, I was like, of course, because I couldn't work out. I was thinking they'd done such a good job of the reflections and the movement of light and everything. I was thinking it just feels so real.
It was, and I think people that they just don't.
You can see all the green reflections from the because it's all silver at the front as well. Of course.
They just don't think that anyone would be stupid enough to just tie it to a balloon and send it off.
And also because you expect it to move more as well. Yeah. When it's up in space, it's dead still.
But it's also relative, because obviously the camera is attached to the TV. So it's like they move relatively. So even if they.
But I expect some judder between the coat hangers and the.
There were. I mean, we got two. There was two TVs that I think 2 hours of footage, 3 hours of footage.
Well,
four cameras. Yeah. No. And then I've gone in and edited that, compressed that, and I probably picked the most composed moment. Right. Now, if I was to do it again, I'd probably include some of those wilder bits.
Some of the bits that
was my naivety at that point.
Yeah.
But then the final shot.
Do you want to get the final shot?
I knew I wanted this big pullback down the valley.
Yeah.
But I also knew that if I shot this on Alexa, or if I shot this on red, it would suddenly the whole thing would look weird. Yeah. So I shot this on the very first DJI drone, the white drone.
Right.
The sort of white one with the two legs. And it didn't have any like control or points A or points B that you could do. So what I did was tie a string to the bottom of it and have it on a spindle. And then I am running away from the set, pulling the drone and releasing more string as I'm going, and the operator is just pushing up tension, and then it's going.
Oh, that's clever.
It's going higher and higher as
it's like a drone kite.
It's like a drone kite, or like a super technicrane.
Yeah, Oh, that's really clever. Yeah, and you thought that up yourself.
Yeah,
very good. Yeah,
I don't know what was in my water, but
should we go on to Sam Smith, Pray? And this, so what period was this to Sam Smith?
This was I think this was 2017.
Right.
I think I did this.
So you're pretty established at this point.
Yeah, I think this is me being pretty. At this point in my film game, I'm quite like at this point like I'm already a known entity, and I'm still a chief. I've like, I think I've just signed for You Are Here in London, which is my London production was my London production company, and so I moved to Rogue, where I am now, and I was kind of in a music video world quite like a known person, and quite like, you know,
it's a pair of safe hands and creatively respected. Yeah.
And this was just like, I was obsessed with Caravaggio paintings. I just wanted to make a bunch of Caravaggio paintings, and so I sketched these drawings that were like images that I knew I wanted to recreate, and then so basically there's a very weird, esoteric and bonkers story to this, but this film is all based on the fall of the House of Usher, and each room is the life cycle of man, but not just the life cycle of man from birth to death. It's also like in attitude, so innocence, experience, and each room in this house that we shot it in Lake Como, each room in this house is a sort of exploration in a thematic idea of hubris or warmongering or innocence or
like the
chaos.
7 deadly sins or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, because when I looked at it, I thought, well, I need to talk to you about the image symbolism, because it clearly has quite a rich symbolism. The sand room, the light shadow frames, undulating dancers. And I have to say, those dancers, you work a lot with the other girl, Emma. Emma. You work with the choreographer. Do you really enjoy working with dancers?
Yeah, I love it. I think dance is wicked. I wanted to be there was a period in my life where, when I was at drama school, I thought I might go and train after my 3rd year and be a contemporary dancer. And that's because I just find it like a very raw version of creativity.
Have you seen a Wayne McGregor YouTube?
Yeah, I love Wayne.
Yeah, when he does the TED.
Yeah.
I thought that's really good.
I've actually tried desperately to get Wayne to choreograph a few music videos for me, but he's so far always turned me down.
Right.
But I think it's just, you know, it's the mime thing, which is that you don't need to give words. You know, physicality can give so much information, and I really enjoy working with movement. I really enjoy working with choreographers and with dancers, and I really enjoy the discourse of how you understand each other in that, you know.
With those group of dancers, are they a dance troupe? Because they seem to work really well together.
That's the Milan Contemporary Ballet.
Right. Oh, okay.
So
that would explain it.
The Milan Contemporary
I was amazed at how well synchronized and coordinated they were with that movement.
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
So I went over to Milan, worked with the Milan Contemporary Ballet, and we devised so a lot of my work in the theatre before I started making film was based around games, and how games or the act of play can create even very deep pieces of work. And a lot of the time I would tell an actor on stage to play a game with the audience that the audience doesn't know the game is happening, but that sometimes by giving an actor something different to think about, they stop thinking about the words or the work that they're doing, and it frees them up a lot. If they're you play a game like you can't step on. If I was playing a game in this room, you know, we've got black floor and white floor. It's like, okay, I can't step on the black floor.
Yeah.
And then suddenly my pathway through this room would be very different. And I'm just playing the game.
You're occupied with playing the game rather than acting, right? Yeah.
And we as an audience infer information from that. You know, he's standing on the periphery of this room. What does that mean? Now, the trick is to find the game that gets you the result that you want. It's not just play any old game. It's like find the game that gives the information to the audience that you want, but the actor doesn't realize what you're doing. And so what we did with Sam Smith was devised a bunch of games in order to create choreography that was spontaneous in the moment, So there wasn't choreography. It was like anti-choreography. So, you know, there was an old like kids game where there's a group of people and each person picks another person that is an explosive device that will explode and kill them. And another person is your shield, and you have to get your shield between you and the explosion. But obviously that person that you picked as your shield has also picked 2 other people, and the explosion, and so you create this movement
undulation
that is an undulating, spontaneous sort of
reaction and counter reaction.
Yeah, exactly. Now you couldn't choreograph that because it would always, it would never feel free enough.
Yeah, there's not enough of a pattern. It needs to be first principles kind of thought through. Yeah.
But you play a game like that and suddenly you create this choreography that feels really alive and really fresh and really free.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's like giving it a set of rules, like you said, giving it a set of rules and allowing it to play out with a set of rules rather than trying to control the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's like programming AI or something. Rules, and then you let it run with it.
Yeah. And you just create the conditions in which you sort of, and I think the trick that I've learned is I know what I know what the outcome needs to be, and I can kind of work out what the input needs to be, and then within that I let the performer be creative. I let them be.
Yeah, embody it.
Yeah.
Sort of, very, very good. Yeah, I mean, so one of my other comments was going to be, it feels very art installation-y, but then when you talk about the Carvaggio, that makes complete sense. It's a real kind of classic kind of.
Yeah, I mean, these are these sketches that I made. So I found this location in Lake Como, and then I took these photographs and then would sketch on top of them what I wanted to see.
So that's the sand room, was it?
Yeah. The sort of sand room, and then there's a room with the horse with the red carpet, and like I created this sort of Bible of images and colours and what each thing meant, and
I mean, I like the lighting in it as well. So it's got the richness of that kind of dusky blue light played off with the warm light. I think that works really well. It works well for Sam as well because his eyes are so blue. He's very handsome in this image. In this video, I think you've done a very good job of.
I mean
the best out.
That's again. This was Pat Mellor, who I did a bunch of work with. I did Coldplay with, and I did Sam Smith with, and he's, you know, in terms of like crafting really beautiful images, he's so brilliant at it.
Right.
And we had this like run of great work that we worked together on, and it was trying to be as classical as possible with what we were doing, you know.
Well, yeah. The results speak for themselves. I mean, it's a real achievement. So what have we got here?
These are just these mad sketches that I was making that were like, you know, basically me working out what each image was.
What were the blue?
They're these butterflies.
So that's the butterfly.
Yeah, we had all these butterflies in this room, which was kind of the symbol for birth. And there's lots of butterflies in all my work. It's like I have an endless fascination with them.
Should we move on to Supermodel?
Yeah.
Push. So this is a collaboration with Emil Rafael.
Yeah, who's at Agile. Yeah.
How did you guys meet?
We actually don't know. I've probably known Emil for like 10 years, and I can never remember, and neither can he. I can't remember who introduced us. I can't remember how we know each other. I can't remember. None of us can remember the way that we met, but we've just known each other for 10 years. And he's a filmmaker I really respect. He's wicked. And then over sort of lockdown, I'd written a folk album in about 2017 that I put out. And it was like a very sort of sad Nick Drake type folk album. And I was trying to write another folk album and I just couldn't do it because I found the tools really boring. You know, I'd sort of like done it and everything just sounded the same as the thing I'd already made. And I thought, I don't really want to do the same thing again. So I was speaking to Emile about it, and Emile was like, "Oh, I'm currently writing this music and I don't know what to do with it." And so then he would pass me music and I would pass him music, and we'd work on each other's tracks. And then this voice, this speaking voice, which I've always sung, and like, as I said, made a folk album, which was very like, you know, singing. And I just started speaking over Emile's music that Emile had written, and then I would add some stuff to his tracks, then I would write a track and speak over it and send it to him, and he'd do his bits, and out of that just became Supermodel, which is this sort of band that we have. Band, that's the loose term of sort of creating music and like also a cinematic world around it. So, you know, we get the chance to dictate the artwork, to the videos, the music, the production, the words, the lyrics, everything.
So everything's a collaboration.
Yeah.
So you both input equally at every, from the creation of the music through to the direction of the music video.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's filmmaking's a really lonely world. You know, it's a really singular experience, and you don't really have a lot of chance to have a communal experience apart from maybe with your producer or with your focus puller as a DOP, if you work with the same people all the time. And so what's been nice with this is that we've got our own separate careers, and Emile's a very like respected filmmaker at Agile and Arts and Sciences, and I have my own career as well. I don't know if I'm respected, but that's for another day. What it was a really nice sort of chance to work in collaboration, and we just don't really get the opportunity to do that. So, you know, it's been really fun.
And really was this the first Supermodel project? Yeah,
well, so this is I think it's actually our third track. So we've had 2 tracks out before this.
What, you released music videos for those?
No, we just sort of, you know.
So it starts as a musical
collaboration. Yeah, it's just a musical collaboration, and then like all things, your hobbies turn into your jobs.
Yeah.
And also, like, both of us were sitting there going, we're kind of well-known filmmakers within our sphere, and it'd be weird if we didn't make a music video for it. Like that.
Indeed.
That'd be so weird. And then we started to think like, okay, you know, maybe we ask other people to make music videos. So maybe we, you know, we're so blessed that we know most of the people in this industry, if not personally, then at least enough to like by name, that we could see if other music video directors wanted to make music videos for us. But then in sort of talking about that, we just kind of decided that actually the beauty and the purity of it, which is it's just a harmony, a collaboration between Emile and me, we shouldn't really kill it by having too many outside influences. We should just create something that is pure and just, you know, it is just Supermodel. And within that, we are able to explore, you know, I've never made a video like this, and neither is Emile. You know, it's not a typical music video for us, really. But it gave us a bit of this freedom, this fresh water in being able to personify a different person, you know?
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk us through the idea and how you came to?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and I don't want to speak for Emile, because this idea, he originated this idea, which was the idea of this seance.
Right, yeah.
So he had this, I think, and again, I don't want to speak for Emile, but I know that he was thinking a lot about life and death and connection and communication, and so he created this concept of a seance and developed on it, which then, you know, what I brought to it was, I think we should dance in it. You know, that's the most fucking joke on a thing ever. It's like, should we squeeze some dance in the middle of this?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah.
I mean, I love it when a dance routine comes out of nowhere. Do you ever remember a filmmaker called Hal Hartley?
No.
Oh, he's an independent filmmaker, American independent filmmaker from the 80s, and he's made some very theatrical he's quite theatrical, like a kind of David Mamet type character, and he has his characters always speak very theatrically, but his films are really great kind of American independent films. But out of nowhere, in one of his films, I can't remember which one it is, there's just a dance routine. It's not
Love it.
Completely unexplained. The characters are in there's no reason for it, and they suddenly go into this, and it's the most joyful. I remember just
absolutely
loving that.
I mean, it's like, we all love Spike Jonze and Weapon of Choice and things like that, and it does, it's wicked when it works.
Yeah.
And so we developed this idea, and then very, very, very kindly our sort of respective production companies kind of helped us put it together.
Where was it shot? What?
In Prague.
Prague. I was going to say, it looks like. Did you cast in Prague as well?
Yeah, cast in Prague. So the Christina, who's the dancer, is someone that I know. I'd done a job with her like a couple of years ago, so I already knew her. Emil knew the production out there because he is from Prague, so he knows a lot of the people out there.
Yeah.
And so we kind of just pulled together all of our friends and favours and mates, and yeah.
And it's shot on film?
No, it's not shot on film, but it's graded by a guy called Tom Mangum at Black Kite.
Right.
His grades are really spicy. They're wicked.
Yeah.
Great. He's a great colorist. So.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because I would have thought that was actually, because the colours are so rich.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's done a good job. And also you got some of the blurry sequences as well that feel a little bit filmy.
Yeah, and this was actually the start. We did actually integrate some, there's a lot of different techniques in here. Straight filmmaking, and then VFX, and then there's some generative, feeding our footage into a generative, and then AI, and then creating something out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who shot this?
Yeah, it was a guy called Michael Bobanik, who's a Slovakian DOP.
Right. Okay.
A really wicked DOP. And so me and Emil had never co-directed anything before. Like, I've only ever just directed my own thing. And same with Emil. And so that was a little bit of a tricky situation. It wasn't tricky, but as in, like,
who leads the
and
who directs the actors, kind of.
It took us a while to just sort of realize that we're so used to doing everything, and then suddenly there's this other person, and we have to collaborate and communicate. And I know that Michael, the DOP, was just like, it's like living with Bert and Ernie, like just two like chat boxes just on each shoulder, without making a decision straight away. And it was like, come on guys, get yourself together. It worked out really well. I really enjoyed it, and it's a nice, I see it very much as like something that we're going to carry on doing for forever.
Yeah.
And we got nominated at 1.4 last month, or last week, I think it was actually 2 weeks ago, and it was really nice seeing it in 1.4, where there's a lot of amazing work in there, but then also a lot of that work is like commissioned with budgets and with record labels and for established artists. And to be nominated where we've written the music and made the video, and we are our own commissioner and marketing label and record label, and it was like, even though we didn't pick up an award at 1.4, it was like, it was one of the most proud I've ever been, because I thought, well, there's nothing more creative than that. That is just pure creativity. And nothing more mad. That's the most mad thing that someone can do. It's like,
well, apart from taking a TV and putting
apart from that,
but I must say, it's got a different tone to the rest of your work. It does feel like it's a different expression of creativity for you.
Yeah.
Than you can see other work's very kind of that's kind of slightly kind of wilder.
Yeah.
And
I think it needs to be, because I think that the concept of who like the filmmaker Joe Connor is quite a fixed point now. It's like 15 years of shooting.
How would you sum up if you were going to sum up, kind of summarize your style of filmmaking? What would you say?
Probably say emotionally resonant filmmaking. Like, if it's funny or silly, or sending a TV into space is silly. It's a really silly thing to do, but it becomes quite an emotionally resonant piece of work, I think, or hopefully it does. And
have you heard about that concept what astronauts get when they see the planet from a distance?
yeah, the overview effect.
The overview effect, yeah. I think there's been a book written about that now as well.
But that's, I think I like to think I can make a lot of different types of work, and I can make a lot of different styles of work as well. But one thing I can't do is make I've never been able to make like a silly, like a piece of work where
frivolous.
Yeah, frivolous. I've never been able to. I'm kind of envious of those, because some wicked work that is like really like poppy and transient and cool and like.
But your work, your relationship with your craft is too earnest.
Yeah, I just put myself, I just chuck myself right into it and like can connect myself to it, and I don't really know how to do it any other way. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, there's people out there that do that. So you stick with what you do well.
It'd be nice though to make just to.
Maybe later in your career, you never know.
Yeah.
So there'll be a frivolous. I mean, but having said that though, that's the Supermodel is kind of more frivolous.
Yeah, I think
it feels a bit wilder for you.
As I say, because I think the concept of who I am as a filmmaker and who Emile is as a filmmaker is they're kind of fixed points. That Supermodel's a bit of a like, it's like a different room in the house. It's freedom. It's like, it's where the fresh water comes from. It's where we can maybe try things that we can't try. Also, the lyrical content of that music. Like when I wrote all my folk music, it was literally lyrics about my life and about things that were going on in my life. And it was only actually when I put it out and like released it that I was like, sort of like it's actually really weird. It's a really weird thing to do, and to have like people be able to listen to a piece of music and go, "God, you sound like you were really depressed." Then I'm like, "Yeah, I was actually." Yeah, So
it's quite revealing.
Yeah.
In a way, a director's not used to, perhaps.
Yeah. And then, all the ex-girlfriends go, "I don't know if you. I never know you felt like that." It's like, damn it. So the whereas Supermodel, it's like I am not writing lyrics based on my life. I'm not writing lyrics. I'm like almost writing characters. And again, we have like a few rules, which is that we always write about very specific types of characters or very specific types of people that populate the world we're trying to create. And they are not me and Emile. I mean, Emile's like a family guy, goes cycling 100 miles every, he's always cycling. He's quite a healthy guy. I'm like, whereas the work that we are creating in Supermodel is a kind of exploration into darkness and a manicness that isn't necessarily prevalent in our waking life, but it's kind of a fun place to explore safely.
Yeah, it's like an archetype you can play with, kind of.
And it's it's music that's meant for big cavernous dark spaces with lots of people,
undulating.
And that is something that we really want to do. It'd be great to like play it at like the Warehouse Project in Manchester or somewhere, and and so a lot of the writing isn't about, how do I feel about this? It's like what will get people really fucking going, like what will get people really
it's got primal
animated
to it.
Exactly. And that's the key.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's a very different muscle to use, I think.
Should we move on to some of your commercials now?
Yeah.
So we line up Land Rover, 70 years young. Can we start with that?
Yeah, it sounds like almost every job I'm like, I've got an amazing story about that actually. Yeah. But I actually do have quite a good story about the creation of this ad.
Yeah. Go on. Well, go ahead.
No. Have you got any questions before?
No, I was just about to say how, or just to line it up, I was about to say vignette commercials for me. I just love it. I think it's kind of a purity of commercials when you do the vignette commercial, because it's the only art form that it's like a glimpse into a person's life, and you have to kind of pack that frame with as much information about their circumstance as you can. And I think it's a real purity. The thing I like about advertising is there's a shorthand in advertising, and image purity in it that people don't always, don't always maybe fully respect until, something's made that wins an award or something. But all advertising has that. All advertising has that kind of visual purity because you need to get to the point so quickly.
Yeah.
And I think vignette commercials are a particularly fine example of that. And this one, And I put here, kids confess to a static camera, run up to it, confess, then go on about their day.
Yeah.
Which, I found it particularly joyful to
it is a really joyful piece of work. It was made with a lot of joy. Like I had so much fun making this commercial, and it was another exploration in mitigated risks, because Land Rover came to me with this idea and they didn't really have a big budget. And I'd done a couple of car ads for Land Rover before where they did have loads of budget. So it's like, well, they had a good budget. So it was like, okay, this is a very different... They came to me because I think they trusted that I would execute something to a high level with
limited budget,
with the means that they had. But within that, I had to, again, say, look, so this is how this is going to work. Like, this film would be great if it felt global. Adventure and it is not it's not something that we own in England or is owned in America or wherever. It's a global, universal idea.
Universal, yeah.
And also, like, a child experience, we only really get polluted by the idea of geography or the idea of nation or whatever as we get older and older. But when we're a child, it's like, you put two kids from two different parts of the world, they'll just play together. They won't think about who they are or where they're from. So I really felt like I wanted it to be a global piece of work. So with that meant traveling. And I basically said to the agency, I was like, I'm going to go away with a DOP and we're just going to travel around and street cast and find amazing frames and come back to you with a film. And they were like, okay, sure. So we did a day shoot in London. And again, those countries were very tactical. So we did a day shoot in London. We did a day shoot in Slovenia. Slovenia? Where's New Bojana, the film studio?
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria. We did a day shoot in Bulgaria.
Sofia, Bulgaria.
So we did Sofia, that's it. So we did half a day in New Bojana, because then you can get like New York and...
Yeah, that's New York set, New Bojana. I thought I'd recognise that. I shot there.
So we did half a day in New Bojana and then half a day out in the streets, and then, so then we decided to go to Nepal as a third country, because it felt like a really culturally diverse place where you couldn't necessarily pinpoint exactly where we were. That felt like quite an important element.
Yeah, to fill in all the gaps of everywhere else in the world. It's not New York and
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and sort of iconic kind of landscapes. Well, that's actually one of my questions, because I was going to ask you about locations for the maximum global diversity. That's my first question. And I was going to talk to you about the editing of it, and the music. Music kind of reminded me a little bit of Clockwork Orange, and the editing. I love the editing in this, and the Whisper Tree Girl, and also the boy. It reminded me a little bit of, have you seen Frank Budgeon's PlayStation?
Conquered Worlds.
Conquered Worlds,
Conquered Worlds.
Yeah, because there's one phrase in this that the kid uses that really reminded me of that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what it is now, when he says something really, really sweet. And I love the astronaut kid.
Yeah.
Because he's like, something about the government, and it's just like, his attitude is, I've got planets to discover. I'm not wasting my time with this shit. And then puts the spice on and fucks off. And I really love that.
So I think a lot of how, again, this was like game playing. A lot of like how
this is the direction you gave to kids.
Yeah, like how I work with the kids was to play games with them and just to mess about with them.
So give us some examples of that then.
So I mean, the girl on the tree, right? We shot for 2 or 3 shots with that actress where she was doing something different. She was like sat on a rock, and then I was like, oh, it's kind of a bit boring. And I was like, I wasn't feeling that. I was like, this is a bit, not really into it. And we were just in this field in the middle of Nepal, And I was like, if you could do anything in the world, what would you want to do? She was like, climb a tree. I was like, great, climb a tree. Which tree do you want to climb? That tree. Okay, cool. I want you to climb a tree, and I want you to find your favorite branch on the tree, and I want you to show me how much, show me how much you think that branch is cool or something. She climbed this tree and hung upside down, and I was like, that's the frame, you know, there it is. Like, that wasn't me going around going, oh, this is a beautiful, perfect frame. It was letting a kid
lead you there,
lead me there and show me something cool.
Yeah.
And the little lad who's playing football, there's all people playing football in the background. Like, they were just literally playing football.
And he runs up to the camera.
Yeah, and we were like, he's in a blue t-shirt. You know, and that lad, he just wanted to do that. He was meant to speak, and every time we cut the camera, the guy in New York, every time we cut the camera, he would go and try and climb along the wall like Spider-Man, and I was like, that is so much of a better idea than anything I've come up with.
Oh, there we go. That's that.
Those guys were having fights, you know. So I think a lot of it is like structuring people as much as possible, and then letting people be, and that I think is where you get really magic bits of performance.
And was it always going to be a static camera?
Yeah, that was something I wanted to do. It's that kid there. I love him. I really felt like you said, like, if each frame was just a picture into a world that was really diverse in terms of experience and life and color, and it had so much. Each time you move from one place to the next, your eyes were like really refreshed by the next thing.
Yeah.
That I felt that moving the camera, and also, like, I think this came at the beginning of that period of work where the camera starts to move a lot. So there's lots of, like, in commercials around, I think this was 2018, maybe 2019, I shot this.
Begin sort of Ian Ponstill's era.
Yeah. And there's lots of amazing pieces of that type of work. And I think there's something in me and I always sort of try to go the opposite of whatever sort of like populist thing is happening. Which isn't necessarily the best thing to do for your career, because everyone goes, have you got any movement or transition? Like, now I've just got no static cameras, mate. And then I'll start doing all the movement in like 10 years when everyone's done it, and I'll be like, oh, this is really cool actually. So I remember thinking, I really want this to be still pictures, each picture a painting, each, like, the subject is the hero, not the filmmaker or the filmmaking, but the kid is the hero. And how can I best sort of celebrate each character on screen in a way that feels really joyful? And I think it's that approach of not going, I want people to come away from it thinking, oh, how clever's Joe Connor? How good's Joe Connor? It's come away and not even see me. Like, I'm not even, it's like they just look at the kids and the work and the, you know.
Yeah.
Something like that, anyway.
It also brings me on to, because the whole 70 years young Land Rover, it also brings me on to the theme of staying relevant and staying curious about, which you touched on a few times during our conversation. But I mean, personally, I think, it's really important, particularly when you have a body of work and you're quite established. Do you use any? Is it just a natural thing for you to stay curious about, from your experimental theatre training, or is there any techniques you use to try and stay relevant and stay fresh to things? Or
I think I'm.
I mean, you mentioned a fresh water idea. Concept.
And there's I can't remember who said it, but there's another theatre practitioner that said, never be afraid to be the idiot in the room. And it's like, I think it's a theatre practitioner, but it's that, like, I'm not afraid to be, to put myself in a position that I've never been in before. I'm not really, I don't have a fixed version of who I am necessarily in terms of, like, the type of work I make. Oh, Joe Connor does that. Or the only thing that I sort of offer or make sure of is that regardless of what I do, whether it's film, theatre, music, photography, is that there's there is a very truthful response to whatever I'm doing from me, and that's my part of the bargain. Like my part of the deal is that I will give a shit about what I'm doing, like, a lot.
Yeah.
But that can be a huge plethora of things, you know. And I think
just finding that emotional connection to something.
Yeah. Like, and your viewpoint on it.
Yeah.
And that I think when you become, if you become like, if I'd have become known as the person that does like static cameras, which I have done a few things in my life that are static cameras, but if I become known as that person, that's the thing that what I do. You have to find ways of breaking your own image, you know, constantly. It's the David Bowie thing, isn't it? Of constant reinvention, constantly breaking what people think of you, because otherwise you
become a cliche of yourself.
Yeah, and you shoot yourself into a cul-de-sac. You know, it's interesting, like, when you mentioned Ian before, who's a filmmaker that I know and respect massively, is like, actually, he barely does any transitions anymore. You know, like some of his, you know, his piece of work that I think is amazing is his Diamond commercial.
Yeah, I like that as well. Yeah.
And it's so un-Ian, but it's wicked. And like, he's, you know, I think really good people, really great filmmakers find ways of subverting what people expect them to do in ways that they don't expect them to do it. You know, and I think that's something that anybody sort of starting or on the journey of creating their work is like, try to not get too hung up or attached to the things that you think. Yeah, the
something
thing
that's worked for you in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work again.
Yeah, and actually you'll end up having you'll have a much shorter career, because once people know what they expect from you, it becomes boring, you know? You become has-been quite quickly then, don't you? And I think people want to work with curious, creative people that are constantly reinventing themselves, constantly finding new ways of doing things, constantly
excited by new ideas.
Yeah, for sure.
BBC, Be There. So what I've written about this one is ability to create an inner emotional experience, highly refined techniques. And I call it your kind of macro liquid light work.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, it's a way of getting the feeling, emotional feeling visually across in a kind of really magical kind of tactile way. And I think it's really well executed there.
Oh, thank you.
Do you want to talk us through this?
Yeah, I mean, this again, what was really lovely about this script is that you've got this sound that's in people's ears that transports them to a place that they aren't. So she's on a bus, but for that moment we think she's in a club. And so, you know, from a photographic point of view, I was sort of like thinking, how can I, in the simplest possible way, trick people into thinking that I'm in a club when I'm not, I'm on a bus. And that the macro, because macro wasn't the way that it was written in the script, and it wasn't the way that we initially thought about doing it. It was going to be a slightly different type of commercial for a little bit, only because we were thinking about, at one point it was going to be maybe more surrealist, that actually she's completely somewhere else and then she's on the bus. We felt, when we were talking with the agency and we were all hashing through the idea, we felt actually the real beauty of this idea is the simplicity of it, which is that if you can transport someone through sound and vision to somewhere that they are not, that is more powerful than, we have actually gone to all these surreal worlds or all these bigger worlds and now we're on the bus. That it felt like a more intimate piece of work.
And more truthful as well.
Yeah, more truthful, more connective. And that also it kind of reinforces the core idea of like your personal relationship to music, which is that I can listen to a piece of music and it can transport me to a whole other part of the universe, you know?
Joe?
Yeah, I can listen to a piece of music and it can transport me to a whole different universe, and that can come from such a small place. Yeah.
Okay. So can you talk me through the techniques and how you?
Yeah.
Is that all studio?
We actually shot this on a bus.
You did?
Yeah, not on a bus in a studio. So not on a bus driving around, on a bus in a studio.
Yeah.
It was Steve Annis shot it.
Steve Annis.
Steve Annis, yeah.
Right.
And we had essentially a bus with 2 tracks either side that had moving heads on.
Lights, yeah.
And we had not only 2 contrapuntal moving
Yeah.
heads, but then static moving heads as well on the floor. So like sort of Sharpies or...
So when you say moving, you kind of theatre...
Yeah, those sort of rock...
Performance lights.
Yeah, rock
lights, yeah.
So we had 2 lights on.
And they're on actual physical track, but they also have moving heads as well.
Oh no, so there's 2 different types. So there's 2 fixed heads, like 10Ks or whatever, on moving track and dolly.
Yeah.
They're on flatbeds, literally moving. And then behind them, every meter, there's like a moving head.
To give it some more...
To give it a bit more complexity and a bit more like...
Yeah.
And then, you know, one of my favorite dreamy things to look at is, you know, if you're on an aeroplane and you see the sun just all moving, or you're in a bus and you see the shadows moving, that's just, I can like just look at that for
same.
It's so amazing, you know, and it's so simple, but it's so brilliant that then the sort of filming in this commercial was about feeling that light moving and changing in a way that is the bus moving, but how can we photograph that in a way that feels like it's maybe club lights or you know, that became quite fun.
And it really works because also you don't have to build any set outside because the lights take care of everything.
And we sort of we had rain bars on the windows, so they all misted up and rained and twinkled and you know. Great.
Okay, so let's
move on. Like that piece of work. I very rarely watch it, and it's nice to just go,
see it again. You did a good job of that, right? Louis Vuitton. So this is at the front of your reel for Rogue. So should we talk a little bit about your Rogue period and how you've been doing at Rogue? So what time did you join Rogue?
I joined Rogue at possibly the worst possible time that you could move production companies, and that was January 2020.
Right, I see.
Rock and roll. Yeah, and to be fair to Rogue, they were absolutely brilliant. You know, I mean, I'd obviously, like, at that point, I'd never made what you'd call like a big conventional move in our industry to like an established player, you know. Chief, a wonderful wicked production company up in Manchester. You Are Here were a brilliant company, but founded by Jeremy, and I was the first director that Jeremy signed, and you know, I helped build that company.
You were his first director?
I was the first director, or one of the first, like in the first group. And so like helped him, you know, and was with him on that journey of like creating a production company, which I really enjoyed and had some great years with him. But then it sort of started to feel like, you know, I'd had a lot of interest throughout my career from like production companies saying, you know, are you ever going to move to a company,
more established,
or like a historically more established company? And I'd always been like, actually, I prefer being an amorphous character. You know, nobody really knows.
We're flying under the radar.
And I'm just sort of cracking on with my own thing, like, you know. And this is it. Yeah, that's it. So, but it kind of felt like 2020. I think I was like, what, how many years ago? 4 years ago. So I was 32, 33, and I thought now is probably a great time to move, like, and to move to a good production company that have great history. And so yeah, I sort of took the leap, moved in January 2020, and by February 2020 the world had ended. It was like, oh damn. And to be fair to them, they were amazing, you know. It's like, because I was really excited to move, you know. It was really nice, it was a really cool thing to like take that step, and I felt like it was quite brave because I'd always kind of been I'd just always been over there doing my own thing, and it felt really like, okay, now I can go and be Joe Connor with all the
bells and
whistles, and you know what, and people can create a formed idea of who I am. And yeah, and then suddenly it was like, nah, so like world's over, career's maybe over. And they did help and support me through in terms of like just emotionally, where I was like, oh no, like, because it takes the wind out of your sails, you know.
And no one really knew at the time what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they were like, don't worry, it's going to come back.
Yeah, I think they were, but it was a crazy, it was a mad time for everyone, and it was. But then, since then I've had a great sort of time with Rogue since like the wheels started to get back on the industry, and I've really enjoyed being there. And this was a very, very bonkers job. It came in quite quickly, and obviously it has like a stellar cast of Cate Blanchett and Emma Stone, and they were like, we want you to tell this story of a letter but I think I had 73 seconds with Emma Stone, and I think I had like literally 73 seconds of her walking in the room, doing the thing, me speaking to her, shooting her, and her leaving was I think 73 seconds. And then there's a similar Cate, I think I got about 12 minutes or 13 minutes. And so it's like the magic trick then becomes, how can you make it feel on camera that you've had all the time in the world? Because that's the trick. The trick isn't make it feel, try and get as much as you can. The trick then becomes, what do I actually need to make it feel like she was here all day? And it was really easy, and it was great. Yeah, because these guys just don't have a lot of time to give even Louis Vuitton there. We shot this on BAFTA day, so this was like before the BAFTAs. So they're doing all the junkets and stuff. Yeah, they're doing all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's literally the night of the BAFTAs. They're in their BAFTAs outfits. And, And who shot this for you? This was a DOP called Morgan Sinclair, right. Who again, I think like when I say like you pick DOPs for different things, I thought if, and I'm blessed to have worked with like some really good guys, amazing DOPs who are like friends and brilliant and wicked. But I also was like, in this instance, I know that if I had an incredibly well-established DOP that had 72 seconds with Emma Stone, their own warranted frustration would get between the work actually getting shot, because they'd be like, this is ridiculous, like we can't work in this conditions, because it was, it's kind of ridiculous. Whereas Morgan, who's at the start of his journey and doing he's doing a lot of really great work, to him that was just exciting. He's like, great, I've got 75 seconds, amazing, I can make something cool with that, and you suddenly get this energy of somebody that is super eager, that 75 seconds is like a godsend to them rather than a frustration. And that energetically is a really great place to put yourself, because then you can make something out of nothing then. So interesting. I like the letter when it's first pulled out. I like the fact you have the shot inside of it. And it's the first, because you in a quite dark environment when the whole process of the printing press, and then suddenly you're in this light environment, and that's just a transition between the two. I think that works really well. Yeah, it was quite, I mean, like, it was a very, it's three very interesting jobs, because it's one film split into three pathways, and this film is like shot in locations that we don't get to. I mean, that actual kid was shot in South Korea. Like, I wasn't even on set for that. I was like dialed in to some guy in South Korea. So it's like, and is there a lot of it available light as well? So it's available light in locations that we don't get to dictate. It's like I was just in Emma Stone's. Get her next to the window, and the first one, which is the letter printing, is much more focused, because that is you have more control. So that we were there in a printing press in Paris for a day, shooting like really beautiful macros, and we had way more control, light control, sculpture control, and then you try and balance a job out by going, okay, I don't have a lot of control there, so this needs to be very controlled and beautiful in order to set yourself up for something where you don't have control. And and then it feels like a coherent piece of work. Have you heard of Bruno Avalon, the director, Bruno Avalon? I haven't. You might have seen his work. He does brilliant things with cut glass. I actually have some in the other room.
kind of like diopters that you cut and you put the, and it reminded me a little bit of Bruno Avalon's work.
I mean, I like, to be honest, I really like that type of work, and I didn't really sort of go down the wide angle route that I think visually we've gone down a lot of wide angle routes over the last sort of 5 years, 10 years. I was thinking about it before. It's probably because, we got wide angle on our iPhone, and that's how we started to see the world, and then we wanted to photograph things with wide angles.
Yeah, and also large format helps as well, because you can have a wide angle lens and you can have a narrow depth of field on the wide angle lens, whereas before you couldn't. A wide angle lens would basically, everything would be sharp, and unless you're gonna direct the eye with light, which most people don't. Light's the last thing that kind of filmmakers consider, I think. It's a thing that takes the longest to learn, and it's the thing that's the hardest to manipulate well. So you kind of do it with framing at first, and you do it with depth of field, and but with a wide angle lens. That's why like all the early Hollywood films, when they were deep focus, they didn't want narrow focus, they wanted deep focus. But then they were lighting things exceptionally well, and certainly when you're shooting in black and white, deep focus works really well. But in color, there's too much distraction, so you need to kind of either light the direction for the eye to go, don't you? Or you do it with focus. But the problem with wide angle lenses before large formats, everything was sharp, so it just could look a little bit chaotic visually. But I think
I really like that, like longer focal lengths, like 85mm, 100mm, 200mm. Like I really am starting to shoot much more on those focal lengths now, and bringing back sort of shooting through like objects and because I think it feels fresh again, whereas it maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago felt stale.
I mean, it's all cyclic, isn't it, I guess? But, certainly in the 70s is when that long lens stuff first started coming into fashion.
Like shooting through New York, like, Dustin Hoffman walking or whatever.
Exactly, so it's like a floating in space sort of thing, which really worked, I think, for the 70s when it's an uncertain time and that kind of floating in space kind of thing. And also it's very internal as well, because when you shoot someone on a long lens, it's very kind of cerebral and internal to the legs. Whereas when you're close up on a wide angle lens, it's more visceral, more gut. You're kind of in their space. So I think there's something nice about the both. I mean, using both is certainly, people get into, like you say, into fads of working technically because they see something they like and they want to emulate that or recreate that. Whereas, when you go a bit deeper like you do, it's more a question of what's appropriate for my style of storytelling or whatever. It's a slightly deeper reason for doing, less gratuitous perhaps.
Sure. I mean, we could put Cardhu up if you want. That's a good.
Which one?
Cardhu.
Oh yeah, Cardhu whiskey. I've only got one comment to make on that. Do you want to?
What's your comment?
No, I'm going to tell you when it's up.
All right.
I'm pleased with this comment. Okay. So my comment is Ivan Zachariah, good doctor.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, this was, again, like you sort of, sometimes I think you smell an opportunity in a script that comes in and, you try and then wrestle that opportunity into like being. And with this one, the script was like, all it was the story of this lady on top of this hill from the 1800s. And the more I sort of researched this story, the more I was like, there's actually loads of cool stuff that go on. And, all these dudes come around the town and they like, looking for whiskey and they're hiding the whiskey. And it felt very like in that Glazer, Dreamer, even like, stellar priests.
This is it.
Exactly.
Period.
And it's like, really,
stellar black and white priest. On the ice rink.
On the ice rink.
But
also the priest. With the guy drinking.
Exactly.
Like, and he pretends it's the.
That's a good doctor. That's the one. That's the Ivan Zachariah. Good doctor.
It's absolutely that's quality film. And I grew up with them, so I just love them. That type of work. So
same.
I really felt like there was an opportunity in this film to sort of lean into that world, and that's the type of work that I love making. And I love creating these like these worlds that feel a lot bigger than they actually are.
Right. It feels like you've been thrown into a whole ecosystem and you're just experiencing part of that.
And again, it's not that cinematically, there's links from this right back to my first piece of work, that sort of Coen brothers style of shooting, where it's like the camera moves naturally and it moves into characters, and then you let sort of still frames live.
Yeah,
there's an emotional,
considered kind of like
there's an
emotional reason for moving the camera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The camera movement tells you a story.
Yeah,
and that, you know, that kind of
that got that efficiency, that shorthand efficiency, which Coen brothers, in a way, they make their feature films like a commercial.
Yeah,
they're the only kind of directors that storyboard everything. They have a whole bible of everything.
Yeah,
and it's so efficient. They know exactly. That's why their budgets are so achievable, because they come in on budget in a way that no other filmmaker can, because they're so well prepared.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminds me of commercial. I think they make feature films like commercial. Yeah.
But again, it's, you know, it's not that far away from.
Yeah, I love the pullouts at the beginning.
And like visually, it's quite similar to Land Rover, with like some static cameras, like still paintings, and, you know, and like letting the life happen through the frame is something that I absolutely love. So so you're not, you know, you let like this next shot, you know, with the guy sort of ripping away at the hay, you just sort of let the world live.
It's like a tableau kind of thing. So you block it out, and then.
Is this on double speed?
Is that on double speed?
No.
Oh, just a good quick cut. Oh, do you know what? There's probably a high refresh rate TV. So it's sharp.
Right.
In a good way. But yeah.
So who this is with Rogue, was it?
This was with You Are Here.
You Are Here.
This is one of the last jobs I did with You Are Here.
Who shot this?
This was Justin Brown, who, like, I mean, yeah, I'm very fortunate that I've worked with wicked people.
Yeah.
And he's definitely in that group of wicked people where you just, I think, you know, he's very, you could tell that he was gonna
do really well. Yeah.
I mean, he was already doing well when he did this, but I mean, like, you know, it's no surprise that things like Burberry Open Spaces is like such a huge cultural behemoth, and Justin shot it, or you know, his Dark Materials or whatever else he's doing is like, you know, he has a certain way about him that is is really wicked. It's really.
What qualities do you think make a really good DOP then? Because you've worked with some of the best. I mean,
but I've Ben Fordersman, Ben Todd, Annika Summerson, Justin Brown, David Proctor. They're like, you know, Rena Yang. They're like, you know.
What did you shoot with Rena Yang?
I did a Bombardier beer commercial with Rena.
Yeah.
Way back in the day, probably like 2013.
Right.
And again, it was a similar thing. You can tell it's not even about technical acumen. Like, I don't necessarily think that like technical acumen is like the top of the tree of a DOP. I think if the director's job is to know the destination of where we've got to get to, like, what does this film need to look like? What does it need to feel like? How do the performances need to sit? What's the music like? And that's, you're just destination led. Then the DOP, I think, needs to find a way of interpreting that journey, you know. So it's not even necessarily like, oh, we'll put a light here, we put a light there. The DOPs that I really resonate are the ones that talk in emotive terms, and they're like, okay, so you want it to feel a bit like this, and I'm like, yeah, I do, and they're like, okay, great, I can do that. Like, we can make that work. Or so they're not like, you know, because we can all sit around and go, oh, I feel like this should be shot on 55mm because of this or what. But like, it actually, what you want is that, you know, this doesn't feel right because of these reasons, and for that DOP to be able to interpret that very abstract. Because I want to communicate in an abstract way on film sets. I don't want to. You don't even too literal. Even though I can, because I've been on enough film sets, I don't like being like, well, I like the 35, but maybe go on to the 24 and maybe
that closes down the chances for more creative, kind of higher levels of creativity.
And I also find that just puts me in my head, and once I'm in my head, I just end up doing logical things, and sometimes the most creative things come out of just feeling it, like a gut emotion. And so I like to talk and communicate in ways that are probably really annoying for a DOP, considering I can talk in their language, but I like, and then when you find a DOP that talks back to you with that kind of emotive language, you realize you're onto something in a really good way. You're like, okay.
Do you get to DOP send you references that they like, or what's your communication with establishing a visual kind of style or approach for a project?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to sort of send photographic references. So it might not even be like stills from a film or something. It's normally like photography. I find that there's a little bit more richness to be found in photography.
I have a couple of directors that do that. They're really into photography, and they always communicate with photography.
Yeah, so I do that, and sometimes on some jobs I'll make playlists.
Right.
Of like music.
Yeah.
The DOP to listen to while they read my treatment, which
is
so wanky. But it like, it puts you in a headspace. And like, it's normally the music that I was listening to when I write the treatment. So when I get sent a script, I know how the film needs to feel. Yeah. And so while I'm writing the treatment, I will make a playlist of music that is the feeling of the film. That I go, that's the feeling, and I'll just have that on loop. Yeah. Which is why my Spotify is ruined. My algorithm is ruined, because it's like I'll just have the same thing on loop for days and days while I'm writing this treatment, and then I'll normally send that to the DOP with the treatment and say, this is the kind of world, this is the thing, and then because what you're trying to engender as a director is to create an image in the mind's eye of the DOP, who is infinitely more skilled at shooting than you are. Like every DOP I work with is way better at like shooting than I ever would be, and so my job isn't to tell them how to do their job. I'm not going to teach them how to suck eggs, but I will try to create the conditions in which they have a picture in their mind's eye, and that picture is not that far away from what's in my mind's eye. And then we're kind of working in that world, and then you end up in really cool conversations where DOP is like, oh, I actually don't see it like that, I see it like this, and you go, oh, that's interesting, I hadn't thought about that before, and that's really cool. You're then like creating rather than executing,
and you don't mind them having a strong point of view?
No, not really. No, I mean, it's like that's what you like, that is, it's like I don't know, advisors in a court or something. It's like that's why they're there. It's like,
I agree with that.
I think it's I listen to my art director, I listen to my DOP, I listen to my costume designer. Like my job isn't to have the idea, my job is to synthesize the idea out of all these strands. And sometimes the best idea, I mean, there's that old Glazer story, isn't there, of virtual insanity, with the and it was the runner. It was the runner who had the idea.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was the old story. There's a story, I don't know if it's true or if it's hearsay, but that they were trying to work out how to make the effect. They knew the effect they wanted, and someone in the office was like, "Why don't you just move the walls? Rather than move the floor." Or they were going to do like all.
Because they're going to have really expensive hydraulics. And then it's just actually just get the to move as a single piece. Yeah.
The best ideas can come from all over the place, and the trick of a director is to know a good idea when they see it. It's like, that's a great idea.
Yeah, an idea doesn't care where it comes from, right?
It's like, that's brilliant. And then I think film sets of old and relationships of old are like, would have been, that's a brilliant idea, I'm going to take it for my own and pretend that I'm a genius. And hopefully now we live in a world which is like, you can celebrate a great idea from everywhere, and it doesn't necessarily reflect, it doesn't make you a bad director to say, this person had a wicked idea. It's amazing.
It's recognizing it's a good idea.
I'm so happy to go up to an agency and be like, we're working on this, and do you know what? This person had this wicked idea. I think it's brilliant, and we should think about it. And they're like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, what a director is a taste antenna.
Yeah.
Of knowing, knowing how to guide it into the right.
Yeah.
So the idea is not necessarily required for you to have all the ideas.
Yeah.
What is required for you to know when that idea is the right flavor for what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Should we put Volvo Humanmade on? So, what period was this?
This was my first car ad, actually.
Right.
And I'd never made a car ad before. This was probably 2017, 2018. And I think it was this little period where agencies didn't want car directors to shoot cars anymore. They wanted like music video directors paired with a car DOP.
Right. Yeah.
So they were actually looking for directors that had never, because they get a little stuck with the, you know, the Bible and the brand Bible and the heights and angles, and you can make for quite stale films.
And also they want a bit of human connection as well.
Exactly.
So you have a car DOP and a car director, then you're not going to get that.
Exactly. And I think, so this was with Gray in London, and it was, yes, you know, and this, again, from my point of view, I was like, God, I've never shot a car ad. And it was like a big thing for me, and then try and not make it look like it was a big thing to the outside world, where you sort of, you know, you really try and nail it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of people tell me it feels different to other car ads, you know, and that's a nice thing, I think.
Yeah.
That simplicity of thought, again, it's just hands and...
My comments is how alive the light is. It just feels, and this is going back to this kind of macro liquid light thing. It's the tactility of it. It just feels very alive and very tactile and very kind of, sort of poetic in a way.
Yeah.
So it's got a really nice kind of feeling to it. It feels like nice. And so I was going to talk a little bit about how car photography's and where do I write this down? Sorry, I've got to find this first time I'm looking for something. It's about a sort of I don't know where that note is, but it's like kind of like a with car and perfume photography, they're both kind of like a it's transcendental. You're taking someone, because you're not really selling a car or a perfume as a product. You're selling an idea more, you're a sort of feeling of sexiness or freedom or whatever it is. And so they're very pure advertising. I think cars and perfumes are very pure examples of advertising, because you're actually taking someone into a sort of, it's almost like a spiritual, transcendental space where you're going, this is the kind of joy of being alive, you know, from the touch of the snow to the looking of a glass. It's the little kind of moments in life that are very joyful and to be celebrated. And that's what I sort of like about car commercials and perfume commercials. And I think you've done a very good job here of using that language.
I mean, I think it's one of the things that I liked about making this work was that you could, in a very small frame, again, infer like a big world. And that's, you know, I've only just realized how much of my work is like macro in scale sometimes, but like big as well. And that sounds really stupid. Let me say that again. I've only just realized how like much I use sort of focusing on small parts of the image or small parts of the world.
It's like the particular meaning, the universal thing, as well.
And I think it's probably from like mime and the smallest action having the biggest reverberation. Yeah. But I find that you can really tell a story through the details of something, the details of how somebody moves, or the details of what's in there, how, you know, the type of bag that somebody has, or whatever it might be. You can really just sort of focus on a very small, quiet detail. And it's also the things we notice, like whenever you walk into any room or you meet somebody, you always notice the small thing. You're like, oh, you know,
the way our eyes work, we focus on certain points and jump around from.
We don't take the whole image in. And I think it's really nice to kind of go, do you know what, we don't need to see this whole image, like a wide and a close and a mid and an over the shoulder, but actually to just go, the story is like can be told in just by seeing that one thing. And that's the confidence in directing and confidence in DOPing, is knowing that you can do it in that frame. You don't need everything else. Let's get onto the drop as well, because the drop's kind of it's the same language as this in that sense. This is for Singleton.
and it's like landscape photography, still life photography tradition, and it's got these abstract tactile elements, but it's like, yeah, it's also.
I mean, this I really wanted to. This was like, I really wanted to tell a story at both ends of the spectrum. So the smallest detail and the biggest landscape, and not really have anything in the middle, in between. So, you know, you're focusing on this drop of water falling off a leaf and going down a pipe, but you know, that pipe, we built that pipe, and the idea was to make something small feel massive, and constantly playing with scale. So that the smallest detail becomes big, the biggest detail becomes small.
And the projection, that's a good idea for getting that story in the barrel, kind of.
Time and the maturing of flavors. And
it's a nice visual technique.
Yeah, and it was, you know, fair to the agencies with Adam and Eve, and I think at the beginning they wanted something a little more functional, less poetic. Yeah. And they really let me go full poetry on it, which I really enjoyed.
You embrace that, yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, as I said at the beginning, it's like I think commercials should be beautiful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They exist in the world with us, and we don't get to say, we don't get to not see them, you know?
Yeah.
Everywhere you walk, you walk past commercials everywhere. So if you're going to inhabit my space,
make it something.
Tell me something, or make something beautiful. Don't like waste it. Don't waste the.
Yeah.
And so, I think, you know, they really let me go full poetry.
Yeah, good.
Which was great.
Good. We're going to finish up with the ELLIE Goulding, Like a Saviour. And the reason we're ending up with this one, we're back to music videos, but the reason we're coming back to this is because we're going to talk about new technologies.
Oh, yeah.
So this one was shot virtual production, right?
Virtual production.
Yeah. And what stage were you at?
This was at DNEG, which is they're mainly a feature film, like, post-production company. So they did like Interstellar and Harry Potter and stuff. And they had a volume stage just out in Park Royal in West London.
When you first got the idea, did you immediately know it was going to be virtual production? Or
yeah, I knew. Again, it's that magic trick thing of like wanting to do a trick and hide the trick.
Yeah,
that I knew for about a year. I'd been thinking of trying to find an opportunity to play with a piece of technology, because I'm not known as a technology director, and so I thought, can I do a film where, again, I sort of hide the technology. Nobody really, it's not like I'm going, oh, look at me and the shiny toys, but it's kind of, you know, creating amazing images using this thing and thinking about it in a different way, or a lateral way. And so when this track came in, I thought, I had this idea of Ellie in a desert where time is just moving around her. It's going day to night and day to night. And I thought that actually kind of is a great use of virtual production.
Oh, it's a fantastic use, yeah.
You can change time and keep
and
play for the same.
Well, you can hold twilight for as long as you like, right? Which real world is not
so. So we shot in DNEG, and actually the lighting for this is, because virtual production's brilliant for loads of things, but one of the things that it's not great for is creating that sense of real world through the light. So like the halation around a subject, the softness and directional light doesn't really come up. The screen doesn't really kick out too much light.
You have to have a additional light.
Yeah, and so it can look quite flat. And so we had a whole rig.
A whole rig of backlights, presumably. Yeah. And RGB control backlights to match the.
Yeah, and then obviously we pixel matte the image on the screen.
Yeah.
Through the light.
The
light coming off is moving with the images in the background.
Yeah.
That scene, so you see that
that was touching the head, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was like a kind of perfect sort of theatrical execution to a difficult like trying to get a tricky look. Yeah. And then just the stupidest, simplest thing is actually the way it happens. So
turn the world, turn the head, and then get them to behave.
Because when I knew that I wanted 2 spaces,
Yeah.
and my producer was like, I've
Can't
been costing it up, we can't afford it, we can't afford it. And everyone had been working out how to get 2 physical spaces in that space. And then as soon as we were like, why don't we just touch the head and touch the world? And everyone was like, and it became this really cool thing on set, because suddenly it's a really old technique. I mean, that is like, it's like a Harold Lloyd technique, you know, it's like an old silent film idea that then...
But that's what I love about virtual production, because virtual production is an old technique. It's back projection, which is early cinema. So when you're really getting into virtual production, you really are applying a lot of the techniques from early cinema.
Yeah, and it's it can become a really fun space to work if you work with it, go with it.
Yeah, because it's what it does really well. It does exceptionally well, and it has limitations, right? So you have to lean into it a little bit, right?
I mean, I can't imagine it, you know, taking over full production as like, you know, we're going to shoot everything virtually, because it doesn't really lend itself to a lot of things.
No.
I don't think, but
I mean,
that was brilliant to work.
I think the world's which the reasons to use it would be, I think, really difficult locations. So if you're trying to get to like really kind of remote locations or somewhere it's very difficult to get a film crew, then virtual production is an option for that. I think certainly holding lights, like I've done here, holding twilight, the whole Mandalorian was shot at twilight. So holding light is a really great use for it. And I think the third use for it is movement. So if you're doing car shoots, like the whole of, I don't know if you've seen The Killer by
Fincher.
That's all virtual production. I mean 90% of that film's virtual production.
And it makes sense, because like closing down roads and getting low loaders on,
and also because he's such a precise director, and he wants to do 20 takes. You're not going to be able to do that on a low loader, and you know, because the light's going to change, right? So he can hold those. And the early morning sequence when the killer's doing the stalking at the beginning, that's all virtual production had to be, because you never get that control of that early dawn light. You won't be able to hold that for the period of time to shoot.
Now I will say that there's something to be said for the moment of performance, and that moment of performance being intrinsically linked to a finality of it. So, you know, we've all gone out and hunted for a dawn and found the most amazing dawn where you're like, oh my God, I've only got 2 takes, because the light's going to go right. This is what we have to do. And that creates a kind of furnace of the moment of performance where the actor is performing, but so is the DOP, the cameraman, the focus puller. There's a kind of moment. There's a moment of performance that you could say, you know, could make the work better, because there is an extra something in the water that is like
just the immediacy of it all.
Even just a focus puller, you know, it's like they have, certainly with large format now, they have an incredibly tricky job of like trying to, you know, if you're in like light changing situations, you're on a 100 mil wide open, someone's moving, they have to keep it sharp. The focus that person on set has will impact the focus of everyone else on set, and then suddenly you create this sense of a moment that you capture. And I think that's the one thing about virtual production that I did struggle with, is that
it's repeatable.
It's really repeatable, and it kind of, the benefit of being able to do the same thing 100 times is also like a negative.
Curse,
because sometimes you should own, you know, some of my
it's knowing when to walk away from something.
Some of my favorite shots are things that I couldn't do again.
Right.
Where, and you know, I got it wrong for whatever reason, like, oh, that I didn't shoot that on the right lens, but then when you get it in a cut, you're like, God, that's amazing. And that, you know, like the universe created that. Like, you know, the light did something amazing, the actor did something brilliant, a different lens was on the camera, we just turned and pointed it, got that thing, got that moment, and it was gone. And it's so full of life. And I think that's the thing that I'm constantly striving for, is like things that feel alive. They feel like they're
But this brings us beautifully back full circle to your performance training. It's it's an experimental theatre.
You're trying to find the live moment.
Which is like a theme, obviously, through all of your work.
Yeah, it is. And I think, you know, hopefully if people watch my work, they feel the same way I felt when I made it. I mean, there's a funny thing when I've done screenings of Breathe, and I get the same feedback a lot of the time, which is that people find that they breathe in communion with the film.
Right, yeah.
And that it alters the way they actually physically breathe in the space.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
Yeah.
It's like you've created this like live moment where, you know, there's an old theory about performance. Like what is theatre, right? What is the act of theatre? Theatre isn't what happens on stage. It's not the actors, it's not the costumes, it's not the set. Theatre is what happens between the stage and the audience. It's the empty space. And that is where the magic, that translation is where the magic comes from. And that's the same with cinema. It's like my favorite place to be in the whole world is to be in a cinema. Just a dark, sensory deprivated place with my phone off, watching a giant screen, and something happens between the screen and me that isn't what's on the screen.
Yeah, and it's not you, it's in between,
whatever's in between.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that like I'm constantly trying to hunt for.
Yeah. Very good. Joe, man, it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
It's just a great body of work for us to break down, from short films, music video. It's just everything we want to celebrate in Setnotes is short form, and we've managed to do music videos quite comprehensively, commercials and short films, which is great. Yeah, I think our audience are really going to love this one.
Wow, I hope so.
Yeah.
I think it's like, you know, the last thing I'll say, which I think is helpful to people maybe at the start of their career, is that you sometimes think there's a trajectory of, okay, I start in music videos and then I make commercials and then I move into features, and it's like a linear path. But actually I think like something that I've enjoyed in my career is like constantly moving around and doing music videos, doing commercials, going back to music videos, going to short films, coming to commercials, and that cross-pollination, and it not being a linear journey, it being an up and down, sideways, back to front kind of.
Yeah, being open to what fate has to offer, right?
Exactly, yeah. You know, I've enjoyed my time here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're entirely welcome, man. Yeah, nice one.
Cool.